we've a rare chance to get under the skin of Cuba. What a country of contrasting faces. Once the playground of the rich, then the home of the revolution. Sometimes a holiday destination, but all the while in recent times, a thorn in the side of the United States of America. Let's head there now with Matt Fry for Our World Inside Cuba.
Welcome to Inside Cuba, I'm Matt Fry. Ever since the revolution, just over half a century ago, this country has produced a succession of iconic images as well as compelling narratives. There are the vintage cars, there are the crumbling facades of Havana, the ubiquitous posters of Fidel Castro and Che Guevara, as well as the story of a small island in the Caribbean kicking sand into the face of a superpower and paying the price for it with a trade embargo that's lasted almost half a century. But what's life really like in Cuba 2 years after Raúl Castro officially took over power from his brother Fidel? We'll try and find out and give you as comprehensive a picture as possible in this special program. And the best place to start is with a slice of life courtesy of the Dixon family. From above, Havana is a warren of statistics about economic decline or the effect of the American embargo. But what's life really like down there? We spent a day with the Dixons on Dominguez Street. It's just before 7 and Lisette is getting her daughter Shaula ready for school. They're lucky because they have a view of the sea. They're less lucky because of all the twitchy policemen milling around their block. I'll explain that one later. She's very picky about her school lunch, Lisette complains. Breakfast is a rushed affair familiar to all families. The men have already left for work, and there is clearly some money here. A new South Korean fridge, a Chinese-made stereo, and all that porcelain. The Dixons have lived here for half a century thanks to the revolution. They pay virtually no rent, but nor does anyone repair their windows. Off to school on a short walk that feels like an excursion into Cuban history. The ancient car that's too clapped out even for Cuban use. It's been parked here for 10 years. The daily queue outside the fortress that passes for America's embassy, hence all the policemen. Most of these people want to leave Cuba, but Lisette, who's never been off the island, says that she only dreams of going to Brazil. The local school is free, of course, but also hard work. Classes till 4 and 2 hours of homework. Lisette is off to her job as an accountant in the state power company. Salary, about £12 a month. Meanwhile, Ruben, her husband, is well up a pole and well into his shift as an electrical repairman for the very same company. He earns almost twice as much, but together it's barely enough to scrape by on.
Cigarros.
Which is why Auntie Hilda, in charge of the shopping, can't do without the government-issued ration cards. They're used for staples like bread and rice. Luxuries like fruit and vegetables she gets at the market, which sells things produced privately for profit by local farmers. This has been the biggest change in recent years. It costs more, she told us, but it tastes better. Back at home, Grandpa Israel gets his monthly health visit courtesy of the state. It's free, and the doctor comes to him. After a quick checkup, there's the usual lecture about diet and smoking.
eliminar las pizzas, los quesos. Sí, sí. A mi papá
Dinner time. On the menu, fried pork and those vegetables from the market, as well as a passionate conversation about the David and Goliath relationship with America, another staple here.
Pensamos que por el color de la piel que
When Obama was elected, Hilda told us, we thought that things would change. A black man in the White House who made promises about Cuba, but nothing has changed.
que con Cuba todo lo contrario.
So what about their freedom, their human rights? I asked. They swallowed. The Dixons are living the strange contradictions of Cuban life, a cocktail of frustration, reassurance, pride and defiance, soured by fear, trapped by history, and surrounded by water. Truly an island unto itself. As the Museum of the Revolution behind me will tell you in great detail, this island has always punched above its weight, courtesy of Fidel Castro. There's a defined leadership here. Then there's the proximity of the United States. Florida is only 90 miles or so from Havana. Cuba has been the very embodiment of anti-Americanism in the last half a century. Meanwhile, America continues to accuse Cuba of being a serial violator of human rights. Our man in Havana, Michael Voss, now explains why this island matters so much to the rest of the world.
For years, Cuba was America's Caribbean playground, with its mafia-run gambling and nightclubs, all overseen by the corrupt US-backed dictator Batista. The streets were packed with expensive new American cars. These were boom times and the US influence was everywhere. Many of those same classic cars are still in use today, not out of choice but necessity. For the past 50 years, Cubans have had to live under a strict US trade embargo. Few countries arouse such conflicting emotions as Cuba. Condemned by Washington as a repressive one-party state, admired by others as a champion of the poor, providing free healthcare and education. And at the heart of it all, this man, Fidel Castro. His band of young, bearded guerrilla fighters, including the legendary Che Guevara, swept to power in 1959. Fidel set out to create a society without private property, communism in America's backyard at the height of the Cold War. The US reacted by imposing a trade embargo, then tried to overthrow him using CIA-trained Cuban exiles. The Bay of Pigs invasion was a disaster. The invading force was defeated, Washington humiliated. It pushed Castro firmly into the arms of the Soviet Union, a relationship which brought the world to the brink of nuclear war. In 1962, the US caught Russia shipping ballistic missiles to Cuba. President Kennedy ordered a naval blockade.
All ships of any kind bound for Cuba.
The Cuban Missile Crisis eventually ended after the Soviets backed down. Fidel Castro went on to survive numerous CIA assassination attempts. In the end, it was ill health which forced him to step down. His younger brother, Raul Castro, has taken over the presidency. The communist system remains virtually unchanged. With Barack Obama in the White House, relations have eased, but the embargo and the old Cold War standoff show no signs of ending soon.
I've always wanted to do this, and to be honest, it's not that difficult. I mean, this is a 1952 Buick. It's been on the road ever since. It's been repaired countless times, and although it's pink and very, very old, it is massively souped up. The engine is only 4 years old, brand new from Japan. I've got power steering, which was also put in recently, but there are no airbags, there are no seat belts, and you don't have a problem with sticky accelerators or dodgy brakes. Wonderful thing. And, of course, this is the only kind of car that most Cubans could aspire to own one day. And if you're lucky enough to have one, you can make quite a bit of money out of it. The people who own this car are charging me $30 an hour to drive it around Havana. So you could see this as a kind of symbol of the fledgling market economy which this country is now flirting with under Raúl Castro. In fact, the best way to describe this pink blancmange on wheels is as a kind of miracle of the recycling culture that Cuba is so good at. This is the small town of Bejucal, about an hour's drive from the capital, Havana, and to be perfectly honest, it's not the kind of place that any foreign tourist here would either get to see or indeed want to see. But here in Bejucal, you get a real glimpse of the gritty challenges of Cuba's economy and also of its opportunities. Now, we'll return here in a minute, but in order to explain the economic story of Cuba today, we have to start in Havana. It's not Manhattan, it's not Monte Carlo. Welcome to what is virtually the last bastion of anti-capitalism on the planet.